The sky over Earth had always been a canvas of wonder, painted with clouds during the day and stars at night. But on that fateful morning, it transformed into something far more ominous. People across the globe stopped in their tracks as an eerie ripple spread through the atmosphere. It was as though the fabric of reality itself was being torn apart. The air grew heavy, and an unnatural silence fell over cities, towns, and villages. Then, without warning, massive objects descended from beyond the clouds. These weren't ordinary spacecraft, they were colossal structures, each one resembling a floating city. Their metallic surfaces gleamed menacingly under the sun, and their sheer size dwarfed even the tallest skyscrapers. Humanity stood frozen, staring upward in awe and terror. What were these things? Where had they come from? And why were they here? Before anyone could find answers, a cold mechanical voice boomed across every device worldwide. Televisions, radios, phones, even car stereos. The voice spoke in perfect English, its tone devoid of emotion. "We are the Zorathians," it declared. "Your species is primitive, your planet inefficiently utilized. Surrender now, or face annihilation." The message sent shockwaves through humanity. Governments scrambled to respond, but communication lines between nations were chaotic. Military forces mobilized, but their weapons seemed laughably outdated compared to the advanced technology displayed by the invaders. Within hours, the Zorathians proved just how outmatched humanity truly was. The first attack came swiftly and mercilessly. Beams of energy erupted from the alien ships, striking major cities around the world. In New York, the Statue of Liberty crumbled into dust as a single blast obliterated Manhattan. London's iconic Big Ben collapsed in seconds, while Tokyo burned under relentless fire. Entire neighborhoods vanished in flashes of light, leaving behind smoldering ruins and countless casualties. Panic erupted as people fled for their lives, desperate to escape the destruction raining down from above. Despite the chaos, some refused to give up. Resistance groups formed almost immediately, armed with whatever tools they could find: knives, bats, Molotov cocktails. These makeshift fighters knew they couldn't win against the Zorathians' superior firepower. But they fought anyway, driven by anger, fear, and a refusal to surrender. In basements, abandoned warehouses, and hidden bunkers, survivors banded, together, determined to protect what little remained of their world. Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface, scientists worked tirelessly in secret facilities scattered across the globe. Among them was Dr. Elena Carter, a brilliant physicist who had spent years studying quantum mechanics and artificial intelligence. Her work had once been considered theoretical, but now it held the potential to save humanity. She led a team of engineers and researchers working on a top-secret project known only as Project Dawn. Few people outside the facility knew about Project Dawn. Officially, it didn't exist, but those involved understood its importance. It was humanity's last hope. Dr. Carter often stayed awake for days at a time, poring over calculations and blueprints. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hands trembling from exhaustion, but she pressed on. Failure wasn't an option. Every second counted as the Zorathians tightened their grip on Earth. The concept behind Project Dawn was revolutionary and risky. Instead of relying on conventional weapons, which had already proven ineffective against the invaders, the project aimed to manipulate time and space itself. By creating distortions in the fabric of reality, the device could theoretically dismantle even the most advanced alien technology. However, there was a catch. Activating Project Dawn required an enormous amount of energy, more than humanity currently possessed. Without sufficient power, the device would be useless. As the days passed, the situation grew increasingly dire. Billions of lives had already been lost and entire continents lay in ruins. Food shortages became widespread, and clean water became a luxury. Survivors huddled together in makeshift shelters, praying for salvation. Yet amidst the despair, rumors began to circulate about Project Dawn. Some whispered that it could turn the tide of the war. Others dismissed it as nothing more than a myth. Either way, it gave people something to cling to, a glimmer of hope in a darkening world. One evening, as Dr. Carter reviewed data in her dimly lit lab, she received an urgent report from reconnaissance, teams monitoring the Zorathian fleet. The invaders had begun targeting key energy grids, systematically cutting off electricity to cripple human efforts. Power plants were destroyed, hydroelectric dams sabotaged, and solar farms rendered useless. With each passing hour, humanity's chances of survival dwindled further. Elena leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. The weight of responsibility bore down on her shoulders. If Project Dawn failed, Earth would fall completely under Zorathian control. There would be no second chances. Taking a deep breath, she turned to her assistant, a young engineer named Marcus. "We need to think bigger," she said firmly. "If we can't generate enough power ourselves, we'll have to find another source." Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean we look to the invaders," Elena replied. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. If we can capture a piece of it, even a fragment, we might be able to harness its energy." It was a long shot, but it was all they had. Over the next few days, teams were dispatched to scavenge alien wreckage left behind during raids. Many never returned, their missions ending in tragedy. But then, in the ruins of Tokyo, a breakthrough occurred. A young hacker named Hiroshi stumbled upon a glowing shard embedded in the debris. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a fragment of alien metal. But when Hiroshi touched it, his mind was flooded with visions. Images of collapsing stars, colliding galaxies, and endless wars waged among civilizations unknown to humanity. Realizing the shard's significance, Hiroshi risked everything to deliver it to Dr. Carter's facility. When he arrived, battered and exhausted, the scientists were skeptical at first. But after analyzing the artifact, they understood its potential. It contained knowledge far beyond human comprehension, knowledge that could unlock unlimited energy. For the first time since the invasion began, hope flickered back to life. Yet even as progress was made, the cost of failure loomed large. The Zorathians showed no signs of slowing down. Their attacks grew more brutal, their resolve unshaken. Cities continued to burn, and millions more perished. Each loss weighed heavily on those fighting to save humanity. But despite the odds, they refused to give up. They clung to the belief that Project Dawn could change everything, and so, as the skies darkened and the earth trembled beneath the invaders' wrath, humanity prepared for its final stand. The stage was set. The stakes, higher than ever before. Would Project Dawn succeed, or would Earth fall forever into the hands of the Zorathians? Only time would tell. As the days turned into weeks, the Zorathians tightened their grip on Earth. Their massive ships loomed over cities like mechanical gods, casting long shadows that seemed to swallow hope itself. The invaders' attacks were relentless, their weapons capable of reducing entire metropolises to ash in a matter of minutes. Survivors huddled in underground shelters, listening to the distant rumble of explosions and the cries of those who hadn't made it to safety. Fear had become a constant companion, lurking in every corner of what remained of human civilization. Resistance movements sprang up everywhere, born out of desperation and defiance. In the ruins of Paris, a group of former soldiers armed with scavenged rifles launched hit-and-run attacks against Zorathian patrols. In the deserts of Africa, nomadic tribes used guerrilla tactics to sabotage alien supply lines. Even children joined the fight, carrying makeshift explosives crafted from old car batteries and wires. These efforts were small, scattered, and often futile, but they represented humanity's refusal to surrender completely. Yet despite their bravery, the resistance fighters knew they were fighting a losing battle. The Zorathians' technology was light years ahead of anything humans had ever seen. Their energy shields could deflect bullets, missiles, and even nuclear blasts. Their drones moved faster than the eye could follow, hunting down survivors with ruthless efficiency. And their communication systems rendered traditional jamming techniques useless. For every minor victory claimed by the resistance, there were countless defeats. Morale plummeted as people began to lose faith in the possibility of survival. The midst of this chaos, Dr. Elena Carter and her team worked tirelessly in their hidden facility beneath the remains of New York City. Project Dawn was humanity's last hope, but progress was agonizingly slow. The scientists faced challenges at every turn: power shortages, equipment failures, and the constant threat of discovery by the Zorathians. Worst of all, time was running out. With each passing day, more lives were lost and Earth grew closer to total subjugation. Elena rarely slept anymore. Her once neat lab coat was now stained with coffee spills and grease marks, and dark circles ringed her eyes. She spent hours poring over calculations, double-checking equations, and brainstorming solutions with her team. Marcus, her assistant, tried to keep spirits high, cracking jokes during late-night shifts and bringing snacks to share. But even his optimism couldn't mask the growing tension in the room. One evening, as the team gathered around a holographic display showing the latest simulation results, Elena sighed heavily. "We're missing something," she muttered, staring at the glowing image of Project Dawn's core. "If we can't stabilize the energy output, activating the device will tear apart everything within a 100-mile radius, including us." The others exchanged worried glances. They all knew the risks involved. Project Dawn wasn't just a weapon, it was an experiment pushing the boundaries of physics. If mishandled, it could destabilize Earth's environment, triggering earthquakes, tsunamis, and other catastrophic events. But doing nothing meant certain doom. It was a choice between two terrible outcomes. Just then, the door burst open, and Hiroshi staggered inside, clutching a glowing shard wrapped in tattered cloth. His face was pale, his clothes torn and bloodied. He looked like he'd been through hell, and in many ways he had. After finding the alien artifact in Tokyo, Hiroshi had risked everything to bring it to the facility. Along the way, he'd narrowly escaped Zorathian patrols, endured hunger and exhaustion, and nearly drowned crossing a flooded river. But he'd made it, driven by the belief that the shard held the key to saving humanity. "Dr. Carter," Hiroshi gasped, holding out the artifact. This is what you've been looking for." Elena took the shard carefully, her hands trembling slightly. As soon as she touched it, a surge of energy coursed through her body. Images flashed before her eyes, stars collapsing, black, holes devouring planets, civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye. The visions were overwhelming, but they also revealed something crucial. The shard contained knowledge about harnessing unlimited energy. It was exactly what Project Dawn needed. For the first time in weeks, a spark of hope ignited among the team. If they could reverse engineer the alien tech, they might be able to amplify Project Dawn's capabilities exponentially. But there was no time to celebrate. The shard was unstable, its energy fluctuating unpredictably. Working with it would require extreme caution, and likely put everyone in the facility at risk. Over the next several days, the team threw themselves into analyzing the shard. They set up containment chambers, ran countless tests, and pored over data until their eyes blurred. Slowly but surely, they began to unravel its secrets. The shard operated on principles of quantum entanglement and zero-point energy, concepts so advanced they bordered on magic. By integrating its technology into Project Dawn's core, they could generate the immense power needed to activate the device. But there was another problem. Activating Project Dawn required precise calibration. Even the slightest miscalculation could result in catastrophic consequences, not just for the facility but for the entire planet. Someone would need to stay behind to monitor the system during activation, ensuring everything functioned correctly. And given the volatility of the shard, survival was far from guaranteed. When Elena presented this dilemma to the team, silence fell over the room. No one wanted to volunteer for such a dangerous task. Finally, Hiroshi stepped forward. "I'll do it," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "You can't," Elena protested. "You've already done so much. You brought us the shard. You don't owe us anything else." "I owe Earth," Hiroshi replied firmly. "If staying behind means giving humanity a chance, then I'll do it. Besides..." He hesitated, forcing a weak smile. I'm probably the only one here who doesn't have a family waiting for me topside. His words struck a chord. Many of the scientists had loved ones they hoped to reunite with someday. Elena herself thought of her younger brother, who was hiding in a refugee camp somewhere in Canada. She wanted nothing more than to see him again, to tell him she'd done everything she could to save the world. But she also knew Hiroshi was right. Someone had to make the sacrifice. Reluctantly, the team agreed to let Hiroshi stay behind. Over the next few days, they prepared for the final activation. Equipment was double-checked, backup systems installed, and emergency protocols reviewed. Meanwhile, Hiroshi familiarized himself with every aspect of the control panel, memorizing procedures, and practicing responses to potential malfunctions. He didn't want to leave anything to chance. As the countdown to activation approached, emotions ran high. The weight of what they were about to attempt hung heavy in the air. Success would mean turning the tide of the war, driving the Zorathians back and reclaiming Earth. Failure would mean annihilation, for the facility, for the surrounding area, and perhaps for humanity itself. On the eve of activation, Elena pulled Hiroshi aside. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how we'll ever repay you for this." Hiroshi shook his head. "Don't thank me yet," he replied with a faint smile. "Let's just focus on making sure this works." That night, as the rest of the team rested fitfully in their quarters, Hiroshi sat alone in the control room. He stared at the glowing shard, its light casting strange patterns on the walls. Despite his resolve, fear gnawed at him. What if something went wrong? What if he failed? But then he thought of the billions of people counting on them, the families torn apart, the children orphaned, the dreams shattered by the Zorathians' invasion. This was bigger than him, bigger than any one person. Taking a deep breath, Hiroshi leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Tomorrow would come soon enough. Until then, he allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection, drawing strength from the knowledge that he was part of something greater. Humanity was on the brink of extinction, but it still had fight left in it. And as long as there was hope, there was a chance. Outside, the sky remained dark, lit only by the eerie glow of the Zorathian fleet hovering above. The invaders believed they had won, that humanity was too weak and divided to mount a meaningful resistance. They were wrong. Beneath the surface, in a hidden facility filled with determined scientists and engineers, the final preparations were underway. Project Dawn was ready, or as ready as it could be. All that remained was to activate it and see whether humanity's gamble would pay off. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the ruins of Earth in shades of orange and red, the countdown began. The fate of the planet rested in the hands of a handful of brave individuals, and one young man willing to sacrifice everything for the slim chance of victory. The moment of truth had arrived. In the dimly lit control room deep beneath the ruins of New York City, the air was thick with tension. Every member of Dr. Elena Carter's team stood at their stations, eyes glued to monitors displaying streams of data. The hum of machinery filled the space, punctuated by the occasional beep or click as final checks were completed. At the center of it all sat Hiroshi, his fingers poised above the control panel, ready to oversee the activation of Project Dawn. Outside, the world remained in chaos. The Zorathians' fleet continued its relentless assault on Earth, their energy beams carving scars into the landscape. Cities burned, oceans churned, and survivors clung to life in whatever shelter they could find. But here, in this underground facility, there was a flicker of hope, a fragile ember that could either ignite a flame of salvation or be extinguished forever. Elena gave the order. "Initiate sequence," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. Hiroshi nodded, his hands moving swiftly over the controls. Lights blinked on across the board, and the shard, now integrated into Project Dawn's core, began to glow brighter. Its energy pulsed like a heartbeat, casting an otherworldly light across the room. For a brief moment, everything seemed to go according to plan. Then, without warning, alarms blared. Energy levels are spiking, shouted Marcus, his fingers flying over his keyboard as he tried to stabilize the system. Compensate, Elena barked, rushing to his side. Her mind raced as she scanned the readouts. The shard's power was far more volatile than anticipated. If they couldn't contain it, the entire facility, and possibly the surrounding area, would be obliterated. Hiroshi clenched his jaw, sweat dripping down his face. He adjusted the settings manually, trying to balance the flow of energy. "I'm losing control," he yelled, his voice tinged with panic. "Keep it steady," Elena urged, her tone firm but encouraging. She turned to another scientist nearby. "Divert auxiliary power to the containment field." The team worked frantically, each person focused on their task. Every second felt like an eternity. The room vibrated with the force of the energy coursing through the system, threatening to tear everything apart. Just when it seemed they might fail, the alarm subsided and the reading stabilized. "We did it," Marcus breathed, slumping back in his chair. But the relief was short-lived. Activating Project Dawn was only the first step. Now came the real test, unleashing its full potential against the Zorathians. As the device powered up, strange phenomena began occurring outside the facility. Above ground, people watched in awe, as the sky twisted and warped, clouds swirling into unnatural patterns. The ground trembled and gusts of wind howled through the streets, carrying debris and dust. It was as though nature itself was rebelling against the intrusion of alien forces. High, above Earth, the Zorathian fleet noticed the changes too. Commander Vrax, the towering leader of the invasion, observed the unfolding events from the bridge of his flagship. His sharp, angular features betrayed a rare flicker of concern. "What is happening down there?" he demanded, turning to his subordinates. "Our sensors detect significant distortions in the planet's atmosphere," one officer reported. "It appears to be originating from a concentrated source." "Destroy it," Vrax ordered coldly. Dozens of drones descended toward the epicenter of the disturbance, firing beams of energy at the surface. But instead of neutralizing the threat, the attacks only amplified the distortions. Beams of light shot upward, twisting and bending like living creatures before striking back at the drones. One by one, the machines exploded in midair, their wreckage raining down onto the devastated city below. Back in the control room, Hiroshi monitored the feedback loop between Project Dawn and the Zorathian weapons. Each attack fed more energy into the system, making it stronger. "It's working," he whispered, a mixture of disbelief and triumph in his voice. But the cost was becoming clearer. The distortions weren't limited to the Zorathians' technology. They were affecting Earth as well. Buildings collapsed under the strain of shifting gravitational forces, and rivers changed course, flooding nearby areas. Natural disasters erupted across the globe, triggered by the instability caused by Project Dawn. Elena stared at the screens, her heart heavy with guilt. She had known the risks going in, but seeing the devastation unfold in real time was unbearable. "We have to shut it down," she said suddenly, her voice trembling. "No," Hiroshi snapped, his eyes blazing with determination. "If we stop, now the Zorathians will crush us. We've come too far to give up." "He's right," Marcus interjected. "The distortions are already spreading. Shutting it down won't reverse the damage. It'll just leave us defenseless." Elena hesitated, torn between her duty to protect humanity and her responsibility to minimize harm. Finally, she nodded reluctantly. "Then we keep going," she said, her voice resolute. "But everyone needs to prepare for the worst." The team braced themselves as Project Dawn reached critical mass. The shard's energy surged, creating ripples in space-time that spread outward like waves on a pond. Above, the Zorathian fleet faltered. Ships that moments ago had seemed invincible now wavered, their shields flickering and failing under the strain of the distortions. Some vessels crashed to Earth, while others were pulled into vortexes that tore them apart. Commander Vrax roared in frustration, issuing frantic orders to retreat. But it was too late. The distortions created by Project Dawn had opened rifts in space-time, swallowing entire sections of the alien armada. Watching from below, survivors cheered as the tide turned in humanity's favor. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of victory. In the control room, however, the mood remained grim. The distortions were spiraling, out of control, threatening to engulf Earth entirely. Cracks appeared in the walls of the facility and equipment sparked and sputtered as the building shook violently. "We're losing structural integrity," Marcus shouted, grabbing hold of a railing to steady himself. Elena turned to Hiroshi, who was still manning the controls. "You need to get out of here," she insisted. "There's no point in staying if you're going to die anyway." Hiroshi shook his head firmly. "I'm not leaving," he replied. "If I go, the system might destabilize completely. This is where I'm needed most." Before Elena could argue further, a massive tremor rocked the facility, sending chunks of concrete crashing to the floor. Dust filled the air, and the lights flickered ominously. "Everyone evacuate," Elena commanded, ushering the remaining team members toward the exit. "Now!" Reluctantly, the scientists obeyed, filing out of the room as quickly as possible. Only Hiroshi remained behind, his hands steady on the controls. As the door sealed shut behind him, cutting off the sound of retreating footsteps, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of his parents, who had died during the initial invasion, of the friends he'd lost along the way, and of the billions of people counting on humanity's last stand to succeed. This was bigger than fear, bigger than survival. It was about giving Earth a fighting chance, even if it meant sacrificing himself. Taking a deep breath, Hiroshi adjusted the final settings, ensuring the system would continue running smoothly. Outside, the distortions grew more intense, reshaping the very fabric of reality. Oceans boiled, mountains crumbled, and continents shifted as Earth fought back against the invaders. The Zorathians scrambled to escape, but many were caught in the chaos, their ships disintegrating in flashes of light. In the control room, Hiroshi closed his eyes, letting the hum of the machinery wash over him. He knew he wouldn't survive the aftermath, but he didn't care. What mattered was that humanity had a chance, a slim, fragile chance to rebuild and reclaim their world. As the facility began to collapse around him, Hiroshi whispered his final words. "For Earth." Above ground, the skies cleared slowly, revealing a planet scarred but free. Survivors emerged from their shelters, gazing up at the remnants of the Zorathian fleet drifting in orbit. They didn't know the name of the young man who had stayed behind to save them, but they felt his sacrifice in every breath of fresh air, every ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds. Project Dawn had succeeded, but at a great cost. The road ahead would be long and difficult, filled with challenges and hardships. Yet amidst the ruins there was hope. Humanity had faced extinction and refused to bow, and as they looked toward the stars, they vowed never to let such arrogance threaten them again. When Project Dawn activated, the results were immediate and catastrophic. Across the globe, strange phenomena began to unfold with terrifying intensity. Oceans boiled as if stirred by an invisible hand, their waters churning into massive waves that swallowed entire coastlines. Winds howled at supersonic speeds, tearing apart buildings and uprooting trees like twigs. Mountains crumbled under the strain of shifting gravitational forces, sending avalanches cascading into valleys below. Entire continents trembled, their foundations destabilized by the distortions rippling through space-time. Above, the Zorathian fleet faltered. Their mighty ships, once thought invincible, now wavered in the sky. Shields that had effortlessly deflected human weapons flickered and failed under the relentless assault of spatial distortions. Beams of energy shot upward from Earth's surface, twisting and bending unnaturally before striking back at the invaders. One by one, Zorathian vessels tumbled from the heavens, crashing into the ground or being pulled into swirling vortexes that tore them apart. Commander Varax stood on the bridge of his flagship, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. For the first time since their invasion began, the Zorathians showed signs of fear. Their advanced technology, which had allowed them to conquer countless worlds, was proving useless against this new threat. "Retreat!" Vrax bellowed, his voice echoing through the ship, All units fall back immediately. But retreat wasn't so simple. The distortions created by Project Dawn weren't localized. They spread rapidly, engulfing everything in their path. Ships attempting to flee found themselves trapped in gravitational anomalies, their engines sputtering as they were dragged back toward Earth. Others were caught in temporal rifts, disappearing entirely or reappearing moments later as shattered wrecks. The once proud armada was reduced to chaos, its members scrambling desperately to survive. On the ground, survivors watched in awe as the tide turned in humanity's favor. In the ruins of cities, people emerged cautiously from shelters, their faces streaked with dirt and tears but lit with hope. They pointed skyward as Zorathian ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, raining debris onto the already devastated landscape. Cheers erupted spontaneously, spreading like wildfire among the scattered groups of humans who had endured weeks of terror. Yet victory came at a terrible cost. The distortions affecting the Zorathians were also wreaking havoc on Earth itself. Buildings collapsed under the strain of shifting tectonic plates, burying those inside under tons of rubble. Rivers changed course, flooding towns and displacing thousands more. Forest fires raged uncontrollably, fueled by the violent winds sweeping across the planet. Nature itself seemed to rebel against the intrusion, unleashing its fury without discrimination. In the underground facility where Project Dawn had been activated, Hiroshi remained at his post, monitoring the system despite the growing instability around him. The control room shook violently, chunks of concrete falling from the ceiling as cracks spiderwebbed across the walls. Sparks flew from damaged equipment and the air grew thick with dust and smoke. Yet Hiroshi stayed focused, his hands steady, on the controls as he made minute adjustments to keep the device functioning. Outside the facility, Dr. Elena Carter and her team struggled to stabilize the situation. After evacuating the control room, they had set up a temporary command center in a nearby chamber. Monitors displayed real-time data streaming in from sensors placed around the globe. The readings painted a grim picture. While Project Dawn was successfully dismantling the Zorathian fleet, its effects were spiraling out of control. If left unchecked, the distortions could destabilize Earth's environment permanently, rendering large portions of the planet uninhabitable. "We need to shut it down," Marcus said urgently, his eyes glued to the screens. "The distortions are spreading too fast. If we don't stop them soon, they'll destroy everything." Elena hesitated, torn between two impossible choices. Shutting down Project Dawn would halt the destruction, but it would also leave Earth vulnerable to whatever remained of the Zorathian fleet. On the other hand, continuing to run the device risked annihilating humanity along with the invaders. "We can't just abandon Hiroshi," she replied finally, her voice trembling. "He gave us this chance. We owe it to him to find another way." Determined to honor Hiroshi's sacrifice, the team worked feverishly to devise a solution. They analyzed every piece of data, ran simulations, and brainstormed ideas, until exhaustion blurred their vision. Finally, Elena proposed a risky plan, using the remaining power reserves to create a containment field around the epicenter of the distortions. This field would act as a buffer, limiting the spread of the distortions while allowing Project Dawn to finish dismantling the Zorathian fleet. "It's dangerous," Marcus admitted after reviewing the proposal. "If the containment field fails, the backlash could wipe us out completely." "It's our only shot," Elena countered. "If we do nothing, we're doomed anyway." With no better options available, the team agreed to proceed. Working together, they rerouted power from auxiliary systems and reinforced the facility's structural integrity as best they could. Every second felt like an eternity as they prepared for the final phase of their operation. Meanwhile, above ground, the battle reached its climax. Survivors huddled together, praying for deliverance as the skies churned and the earth quaked beneath their feet. Some clung to loved ones, whispering words of comfort. Others simply stared upward, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. Despite the destruction surrounding them, there was a sense of unity, a shared understanding that humanity was fighting for its very existence. High above, Commander Varax issued frantic orders as his flagship struggled to escape the distortions. "Activate emergency protocols, divert all power to the engines." But it was too late. A massive rift opened directly in front of the ship, pulling it inexorably toward its doom. Vrax roared in frustration, pounding his fists against the console, as the vessel was consumed by the void. The last remnants of the Zorathian fleet followed shortly thereafter, swallowed whole by the same phenomenon they had sought to dominate. Back in the underground facility, the team initiated the containment field. Energy surged through the system, creating a shimmering barrier around the epicenter of the distortions. At first, it seemed to hold, but then, cracks began to form. The field wavered, its edges flickering ominously as the strain mounted. "Stabilize." Elena shouted, her voice cracking with desperation. Marcus and the others worked furiously, adjusting settings and diverting additional power to reinforce the field. Just when it seemed they might fail, the distortions began to subside. Slowly but surely, the chaotic energies dissipated, leaving behind a battered but intact planet. When the dust settled, silence fell over the world. The Zorathians were gone, their mighty fleet obliterated, their leader presumed dead. Earth, though scarred and broken, endured. Survivors emerged cautiously from their shelters, gazing up at a sky that felt unfamiliar yet undeniably free. In the control room, Hiroshi slumped forward, unconscious but alive. His body bore the marks of exhaustion and injury, but he had accomplished what few believed possible. Thanks to his bravery, humanity had survived its darkest hour. As the team reunited in the aftermath, they mourned those who had been lost while celebrating the victory they had achieved. Elena knelt beside Hiroshi, gently brushing hair from his face. "You did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You saved us all." Though the road ahead would be long and difficult, humanity carried forward with resilience. They remembered those who had given their lives to protect the planet, especially Hiroshi, whose sacrifice ensured the success of Project Dawn. And as they looked toward the stars, they did so not with fear, but with determination. The aliens had underestimated Earth once, and humanity vowed never to let such arrogance threaten them again. When the dust finally settled, Earth stood scarred but free. The skies, once filled with the ominous presence of Zorathian ships, were now eerily quiet. Survivors emerged from their shelters, blinking in the sunlight that filtered through the haze of smoke and debris. The air smelled of ash and burning metal, but beneath it was a faint scent of hope, a reminder that humanity had endured its darkest hour. The cost of victory was staggering. Entire cities lay in ruins, their skylines reduced to jagged skeletons of steel and concrete. Rivers ran black with soot, and forests smoldered like dying embers. Billions of lives had been lost during the invasion, and countless more displaced. Families were torn apart, homes destroyed, dreams shattered. Yet amidst the devastation there was resilience. People banded together, sharing food, water, and whatever supplies they could scavenge. Strangers became allies, united by the shared goal of rebuilding what had been taken from them. In the underground facility where Project Dawn had been activated, Dr. Elena Carter and her team worked tirelessly to assess the damage. Hiroshi, though severely weakened, survived his ordeal and was rushed to medical care. His sacrifice had become a symbol of humanity's determination, a testament to the courage it took to stand against overwhelming odds. As word of his heroism spread, survivors across the globe began referring to him as the Guardian of Dawn, a name that would echo through history. Elena, however, couldn't afford to rest. She knew the fight wasn't over, not entirely. While the Zorathians had been defeated, their technology remained scattered across the planet, buried in the wreckage of their fallen ships. If left unchecked, this alien tech could fall into the wrong hands or pose unforeseen dangers to Earth's fragile ecosystem. It was imperative to locate and secure every piece before it caused further harm. With the help of Marcus and the remaining scientists, Elena launched an initiative called Operation Reclamation. Teams of engineers, researchers, and volunteers fanned out across the globe, searching for remnants of Zorathian technology. What they found astonished even the most seasoned experts. The invaders' weapons, shields, and propulsion systems operated on principles far beyond human understanding. Concepts rooted in quantum mechanics, zero-point energy, and advanced artificial intelligence. By studying these artifacts, humanity gained insights that would revolutionize science and technology forever. Using knowledge gleaned from the alien shard that Hiroshi had risked everything to deliver, Elena's team developed new methods of harnessing clean, renewable energy. Power plants fueled by zero-point reactors replaced fossil fuels, providing sustainable electricity to communities worldwide. Advanced robotics, inspired by Zorathian drones, assisted in rebuilding efforts, clearing rubble, and constructing temporary shelters for displaced populations. Medical breakthroughs followed, with nanotechnology capable of repairing injuries at the cellular level, saving countless lives. But perhaps the most significant advancement came in the realm of space exploration. Humanity realized that Earth was not alone in the universe, and that peace required preparation. Nations set aside their differences, pooling resources to build a unified global defense system. Orbital satellites equipped with distortion-based weaponry ensured that no hostile force could approach Earth without facing swift retaliation. At the same time, plans were drawn up for interstellar colonization, ensuring humanity's survival even if disaster struck again. As the years passed, Earth slowly began to heal. Cities rose from the ashes, their designs incorporating lessons learned from the invasion. Buildings were constructed to withstand natural disasters, powered by renewable energy sources that left no carbon footprint. Parks and green spaces flourished, reclaiming land once scarred by war. Education systems prioritized science and innovation, nurturing a generation eager to push the boundaries of human potential. Hiroshi, though still recovering from his injuries, became a beloved figurehead of the new era. He traveled the world, speaking to crowds about the importance of unity and perseverance. "We are stronger together," he often said, his voice carrying both wisdom and humility. "No matter how dark things seem, we can overcome anything if we refuse to give up." Dr. Elena Carter, hailed as a hero, stepped forward to lead the rebuilding effort. Her leadership style was marked by compassion and pragmatism, earning her respect from people of all walks of life. Under her guidance, humanity embraced a philosophy of coexistence, not just with each other but with the environment. Forests were replanted, oceans cleaned, and wildlife protected. The scars of war remained visible, but they served as reminders of how far humanity had come and how much farther it could go. Yet despite the progress, questions lingered. Why had the Zorathians invaded? Were they truly gone, or merely regrouping somewhere beyond the stars? And what other civilizations existed out there watching silently from the shadows? These uncertainties fueled humanity's drive to explore the cosmos, seeking answers while preparing for whatever challenges lay ahead. One evening, as Elena stood on a hill overlooking the rebuilt city of New York, she gazed up at the night sky. Stars twinkled above, their light undimmed by the chaos below. Beside her, Hiroshi joined her, leaning on a cane but smiling nonetheless. "What do you think is out there?" he asked softly, gesturing toward the heavens. "I don't know," Elena replied honestly. "But I do know one thing: we're ready. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Her words carried weight, born not just from confidence but from experience. Humanity had stared extinction in the face and refused to blink. They had fought, sacrificed, and endured, emerging stronger than ever before. The Zorathians had underestimated Earth once, but never again. And so as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, humanity looked toward the future with hope. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but they carried with them the lessons of the past, the memory of those who had fallen, the bravery of those who had fought, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Earth had risen from the ashes, forged anew by fire and resolve. The aliens had tried to conquer it, only to find themselves undone by the indomitable spirit of humankind. In the end, the story of Project Dawn was not just one of survival. It was a testament to the power of hope, ingenuity, and the unyielding belief that even in the face of unimaginable odds, humanity could light the way to a better future. For Earth,